There's something about birthday dinners in my family that always made me feel like an outsider wearing a borrowed smile. That night, Grandpa's 82nd was no different. We gathered in the dining hall of the old family house in Minneapolis, a place that smelled like polished wood, mothballs, and secrets. The chandelier overhead cast a golden light on the long mahogany table, its shine too warm to be comforting. I took my seat last, and not by accident. My chair was half a step away from the others, angled just enough to make me feel like a guest, not blood. I'd learned long ago that in families like mine, proximity doesn't always mean closeness. Merle, my older brother, was already there, loud as ever in his tailored suit, sipping something amber and laughing too hard at his own jokes. We hadn't been close in years, not since he started acting like a CEO of the family legacy rather than part of it. I avoided eye contact and focused on Grandpa, who sat at the head of the table, his back straight despite his age, his eyes sharp despite everything else. The conversations floated above the clinking cutlery, cousins comparing vacation plans, aunts boasting about their kids. But underneath it all, there was this shared awareness. Grandpa wasn't going to have many more of these dinners. Everyone felt it. Some pretended otherwise. Merle leaned toward our cousin Janice and muttered, "Ticking clock, huh?" Just loud enough for me to hear. I turned away, pretending I hadn't. But something inside me tightened. Then came the toast. Grandpa stood slowly, his glass raised, his hand slightly trembling but voice still clear. "To truth," he said. "Not the convenient kind, but the kind that costs you. That kind builds legacies." People chuckled politely. Merle moved to refill his glass, Grandpa's favorite bourbon. His smile was stretched a little too wide, and for a second, his hand hovered over the glass, just a blink longer than it should have. I caught it. That hesitation. It was nothing, and yet it was everything. He poured the drink, handed it over. The smell of the bourbon hit me, sweet, smoky, familiar. Grandpa took a sip, nodding slowly as he swallowed. The room buzzed on, but I felt it, like something had shifted. Something had been let loose. A single droplet fell from the bottom of the glass, staining the white linen tablecloth. No one noticed, but I did. That little drop, dark and quiet. I couldn't unsee it. I excused myself, stepping out to the porch where the autumn air bit sharper than I remembered. The cold helped me think. Or maybe it numbed the part of me that didn't want to. Families like mine don't explode, I muttered to myself. They corrode. I leaned against the railing, watching the shadows move behind the glass doors. I remembered the time Merle had rearranged Grandpa's finances, claimed it was for efficiency. Grandpa never brought it up again, but I always wondered what it cost him. Inside, I saw Merle whispering to Jeff Daniels, an old lawyer friend of the family. They leaned close, too close for comfort. My pulse quickened. I remembered something my mother used to say, blood is thicker than water, but sometimes it clots. Part of me still wanted to believe Merle was just being Merle. Arrogant, entitled, greedy. But not malicious, not deadly. Another part wasn't so sure anymore. Dinner ended. People stood to leave, the mood winding down. That's when Grandpa beckoned me with a nod. Quiet, subtle. I followed him down the hallway, past the family portraits, faces frozen in time, unaware of the mess we'd become. He handed me a small, brown envelope. Sealed. His fingers lingered a second too long. "Keep this safe," he whispered, "no matter what." Merle's eyes found us from across the hall. His smile disappeared. I slipped the envelope into my purse without a word. My hand trembled slightly as I zipped it shut. "Time will tell who's truly family," Grandpa said, not looking at me. Just staring ahead, as if he could already see the next page of the story. He left before dessert, said he was tired, but I noticed, his hand on the doorknob, unsteady. Like the house itself was heavier than usual. I stayed behind, clearing dishes with idle hands. My eyes drifted to the wineglass he left behind, untouched, still catching candlelight. It felt like a question mark. Merle stepped behind me. I felt him before I heard him. "You always were his favorite, weren't you?" I didn't answer, just looked down at that glass and realized that kind of jealousy didn't go away. It brewed. It waited. Fear crept in then, not the kind that screams, but the kind that watches. Quiet, calculating. I knew something had started that night. Something we couldn't pretend our way out of. Families don't fall apart overnight. They just stop pretending. The phone rang at 2:03 a.m., and I already knew what voice I'd hear. My phone buzzed hard against the nightstand, yanking me out of a sleep that hadn't really started. The screen glowed 2:03 a.m. I didn't even need to check the caller ID, I already knew. Bad news doesn't wait until morning. Aunt Phyllis, I answered, voice thick. It's your grandfather, she choked out. He collapsed. Right after dinner. We're at Mercy General. He's critical. I sat up, blankets falling around me like the last comfort I'd know for a while. My mind went straight to that moment, his trembling hand on the doorknob, the way his voice cracked just slightly in that last toast. People always say, you never know the last time. But sometimes you do. You just lie to yourself about it. I dressed fast, no makeup, no second thoughts. I grabbed my coat and purse, hesitating just long enough to slide the envelope from last night into my bag. I didn't even think about it. My body moved like it knew this night was about more than just a hospital trip. The streets were fogged over, traffic lights blurred in red and green halos. I drove through them like I was the only one alive out there. And maybe I was, because everything felt wrong, like I'd just stepped into the part of the story where nothing good happens again. At the fluorescent lights stung my eyes. The smell of antiseptic slapped me awake better than coffee ever could. The waiting room was all low murmurs and machine beeps. I spotted them immediately. Merle in his usual crocodile suit, pacing like grief was a performance. Cousin Glenn looked like he might throw up. Aunt Phyllis had her hands clasped tight, lips moving fast in some silent prayer she didn't quite believe. No one noticed me walk in. Maybe I liked it that way. I moved closer, staying to the side, just in time to hear Merle speaking to someone behind the privacy curtain. No autopsy, he said, voice low but urgent. He wouldn't want that. We'll handle it. That landed like a hammer in my gut. A nurse's eyes met mine through the crack in the curtain. She looked away fast. There's grief. And then there's panic disguised as grief. A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand, face neutral. He's stable, for now, he said. Still unconscious. No stroke, no heart attack. We're running a full panel. Merle jumped in. He's been under stress. The man's 82. Probably just his body saying enough. I stepped forward. Are you testing for toxins in his blood? The air snapped still. Merle's head whipped toward me like I'd slapped him. Is that necessary? He asked the doctor, forced calm in his voice. The doctor hesitated. It's not standard unless. I think it's necessary, I said, voice flat. He nodded slowly, jotting something down. Merle didn't say another word, but his jaw clenched like a trap about to spring. Aunt Phyllis murmured something about prayers again. I sat down, didn't close my eyes, just held onto my purse like it might float if the room sank. Truth doesn't knock politely. It crashes through when you least want it. I remembered something from the file Grandpa gave me. I pulled it out, carefully unfolding the letter inside. There it was. A copy of a legal document, notarized and signed just last month. He'd named me as executor. Merle's name gone. His inheritance reduced to a whisper in the margin. If Grandpa died tonight, that version of the will could disappear just as easily as he might. I snapped a photo with my phone, uploaded it to cloud storage. Then put the paper back. Calm, quiet, no one saw. Truth is patient, but I'm not. Later, they let me in to see him. The room was cold, quiet except for the machines doing the work his body no longer could. He looked small, faded. I stood at his side, not sure if I was more angry or afraid. I don't know what you expected me to do, I whispered. But I promise, I won't look away anymore. My hand found the pocket of my coat. Inside, I felt the familiar curve of metal, his old pocket watch. I must have taken it without thinking. It was ticking, faint but steady. They built their lies like walls. But walls have cracks, and I'm done patching them up. Outside, I stepped into the parking lot for air. The sky was still dark, horizon bleeding gray. My phone buzzed again, unknown number. I opened the message. Don't trust anyone, not even those praying at his bedside. Attached, a photograph. Grandpa, standing in front of a newspaper rack. The date on the paper 2 weeks after the date listed on his medical file as presumed date of death. I stared at it. My breath caught. My fingers went numb. I looked back at the hospital windows. They weren't family anymore. They were suspects. I forwarded the message to myself, deleted the original, slid the phone into my pocket and whispered, "What the hell did you do, Grandpa?" By the time I got the text, Minneapolis was already sliding into that cold winter night, streetlights glowing weak amber, the edges of the pavement slick with early frost. It hit me like a warning. Merle wanted a meeting. "Resolve things," he wrote. "Downtown bar, 11:30 p.m. sharp." My gut tightened. Something about the tone made my skin crawl. I used to trust him. I don't anymore. When I pulled up in front of the bar, the sign flickered, the sidewalk empty. I waited under the neon haze, my breath a cloud I didn't ask for. He sent another text. "Make it quick. It's for Grandpa." I could taste the lie. Grandpa trusted his legacy to the wrong hands. My instinct kicked in. I didn't walk in. I walked away. On the drive home I spotted a black SUV parked outside Ashcroft Manor. Tinted windows, engine idling. My muscles tensed. If they're moving at night, truth doesn't need daylight. I slid inside without being seen, heart hammering, and closed the door gently behind me. I waited in the basement office, Grandpa's old workspace. On the screen of his PC I logged in quietly. The Wi-Fi network name jumped out. "The truth sleeps." My blood ran cold. That phrase. Grandpa used it last summer when we sat on the porch. It wasn't comforting then. It screamed warning now. I clicked through folders until I found one titled, Legacy 2024 awaiting review. The timestamp. Hours after Grandpa's collapse. My fingers trembled but I kept steady. The files were locked, encrypted. I thought of the pocket watch, 2:03. I entered that. The door opened. Inside, spreadsheets, a document marked, Transfer to DRX Corp. Merle's Shell Company. My chest tightened. This wasn't about a will alone. It was about control, power, history rewritten without witnesses. When the cover-up becomes the bigger story, I said quietly, "You're no longer just an observer." I felt the shift inside me. I wasn't someone who watched anymore. I was someone who acted. The basement light flickered as I rose, library footsteps echoing upstairs. I carried the envelope, the one Grandpa handed me, and strolled into the study. The watch sat exactly where it used to rest. And it was ticking. I reached for it, it belonged to me. Upstairs I caught Zadie Mae in the doorway. She mimed surprise, eyes wide. "Venora, maybe we should leave it," she said quietly. I didn't flinch. "Grandpa trusted me," I said. "I won't turn away." I showed her the amendment inside the envelope. Her face drained of color. She took a step back and didn't speak. I realized then I was alone. Not helpless, alone but unbowed. I left the house through the back porch, scarf wrapped tight, the Minnesota night biting through the fabric. I called Clyde Mercer and said the words, "Midnight tick-tock." He replied simply, "Understood." My mission felt real in that moment. I wasn't the overlooked daughter anymore. I was the one who would make them remember. I locked the watch's box using an app I'd set up earlier. I placed the USB drive in my coat pocket. I whispered into the darkness. They built their walls with silence. I'll bring the knock that wakes them. And right then, headlights flashed across the driveway. A car pulling away, or arriving. I held my breath. What began tonight had no turning back. I woke early, before dawn fully broke, drawn by a nagging sense I couldn't ignore. The house felt heavy, like it had been holding its breath. I moved through the basement again, carrying only a flashlight and my resolve. My hands shifted boxes, emptied shelves, listened for a sound that didn't belong. The cold concrete floor creaked under me. New scratches caught my eye. Long gouges deep in the plank beneath an old rug. I pulled the rug back slowly, my pulse steady. Beneath a loose board I found a velvet pouch, soft but ominous. Inside was a flash drive and a note in Grandpa's handwriting. "If this vanishes, trust no one." My breath hitched, not with fear, but with clarity. The floor, the house, the legacy, they weren't safe anymore. Above me I heard footsteps, Merle's heavy boots on the stairs. I stuffed the pouch in my boot, zipped the case, and slipped away without a sound. When they start hiding things beneath your childhood, it's no longer your home. Back in my childhood bedroom, the walls still carried echoes of simpler days. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and plugged the flash drive into my old tablet. Only one file. A voicemail, dated 24 hours after Grandpa's recorded death. His voice. Unmistakable, urgent. If you're hearing this, they lied. I'm not gone. Not yet. He named Merle and DRX Corp., said he'd planned to go public. Then, the one who reads this must carry it forward. Be louder than my silence. I sat very still. My heart felt like it might shatter, or firm up. Lies can circle the globe while truth puts on its shoes. But once truth arrives, it doesn't whisper. I thumbed the play button again. This was no accident. I pulled out my phone and called Clyde Mercer on the encrypted line. I found something, I said. His voice changed instantly. You're in this now. There's no one knowing what you know. He told me to check property deeds. DRX Corp. Was edging Grandpa out of control. I printed the transcript, hid it in a suitcase under clothes. I found an old photo, me and Grandpa by the lake, taped it inside the lid. Zadie Mae's face flashed in my mind, her shock the other night. Maybe she knew more than she revealed. I decided to confront her later. Every truth has its keeper. Maybe this time, it's me. Later, in the kitchen, the flash drive sat on the table, even though I tucked it in my suitcase hours ago. I froze. Someone had been in my room and placed it there deliberately. My heart raced with realization. I pulled up the unknown message on my phone. Nice try. He was always naive. Signed, D.K. Delano Klein. My spine stiffened. He knew. They knew. I grabbed my jacket and opened the suitcase. Photo still there. Drive gone. If they want a game, they'll find I play until the last move. I woke to the faint, then, of Grandpa's pocket watch ticking on the nightstand. The room was still dark, and the sound cut through the quiet like a warning I'd ignored for far too long. I pulled out the flash drive and the voicemail transcript and laid them side by side. That note from beneath the floorboard, if this vanishes, trust no one, echoed in my head. The weight of silence had cost me time, trust, identity. Grandpa's voice rang in memory. If you're hearing this, they lied. I grabbed my satchel, tossed in the encrypted tablet, the watch, the letter, the USB drive, and hit redial on Clyde's number. His voice came firm. You're in the crosshairs now. And I realized this morning wasn't about survival anymore. It was about beginning. By mid-morning I was at Clyde Mercer's cabin by Lake Minnetonka, cold air off the water, papers spread across his table, maps and timelines pinned to the wall. He walked me through the legal financial mess. Merle and DRX Corp., shell companies, hidden transfers, missing audit trails. I took a breath. If they control the money, I said, we control the proof. We outlined 3 moves. Leak the footage to the local station, freeze Merle's access via injunction, and lock Grandpa's amended will with 2 trusted parties. The watch sat on the table between us, its ticking soft. Clyde quoted Churchill. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. He looked me in the eye. They'll strike back hard. You ready for that? I nodded, aware I'd stepped into the arena. I moved the watch slightly. The ticking seemed louder now. It was the countdown, not theirs, mine. Later I walked into the family meeting under the guise of cordiality. I handed Merle an envelope marked, for Grandpa's eyes only. I watched him blink, his jaw tighten. I began slowly. I found the ledger, the transfers, the missing gift photos. Zadie Mae's chair scraped back. Orpha Linnell's hand trembled. I leveled my voice. When you removed me from the speech and the will, you erased more than my name, you erased your honor. He fired back legal jargon, defamation, investigators notified. The room stood still. I kept calm. You made the rules, I said quietly as I left the room, I'm just choosing to play them. They thought I'd tremble. They're about to learn I don't. Back at my apartment that night I spread everything out. Video freeze frames, transaction logs, Grandpa's pledge, Clyde's affidavit. I sent copies to the local news editor, to Clyde's partner, and as backup, 1 file to my old husband, Deacon Hill. Then I recorded my own voicemail. I found the truth. I'm stepping up, for him and for us. I locked the main file with the passcode derived from the watch time, 2:03. I set the gathering for the next morning at Ashcroft Manor, public neutral, privately strategic. I closed my eyes for a moment. My mind said, this is no longer about the past, they built a fortress. I'm bringing a blueprint and the detonator. As I drifted toward sleep, I heard the watch settle into a steady tick. The sound felt like readiness. At 3:17 a.m., an envelope slid silently under the front door of the manor. Black. Unmarked. I held the watch, hearing its second tick. The address printed on the card was our own, Ashcroft Manor. The main hall of Ashcroft Manor had been transformed. Chairs that once lined family dinners were pushed aside, a projector stood at the front, and the gathered family members sat in uneasy silence. I stepped into the center, carrying Grandpa's pocket watch, the flash drive, and the sealed envelope, icons of what Romaine Buckley left behind and what Merle Haskins tried to erase. I looked at the faces, Merle calm, Zadie trembling, Orpha quiet, and I said quietly but clearly, you called this meeting to celebrate legacy, I called it to reclaim truth. A hush settled. I held up the plaque I was given, Legacy Award, Ashcroft Family 2024, and placed it next to the real award, hidden until now. The twist was subtle. The gift was given to redirect recognition. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you, I quoted Maya Angelou, letting the words fill the room. Resentment turned into empowerment in that moment, the air shifted. I clicked the remote. The screen lit up, and the hour of reckoning began. First came the voicemail, Grandpa's voice, low and urgent, recorded after his death. Then the video, our family dinner, laughter in his honor, then 45 seconds of black before he collapsed. The missing time was the evidence. Finally, I displayed the ledger, unauthorized transfers, the Shell Corporation DRX Corp., the will amendment. Murmurs rose, chairs scraped back. Merle's smile faded, the weight of each reveal pressed down. I faced him. You rewrote his trust. You rewrote my place in his home. Tonight we rewrite your story. He stood and accused me of tearing the family apart. I met him squarely and said, I'm restoring it. I handed out copies of the amended will and the sealed letter to every guest. Some covered their mouths. Others looked away. The confrontation wasn't loud, it was inevitable. I watched the room change. My phone buzzed. On the screen, one word, now. Then a message. Don't worry, they watched you watch. Signed, DKI lifted the pocket watch. Its hands were fixed at 2:03. I wound it. The ticking returned. The time of secrets is over, I declared. The hall held its breath. Merle stepped back. A local news camera blazed into the room. Clyde Mercer's contact had shown up live. I said into the mic, truth doesn't wait for permission. In that instant, we crossed from private dispute into public reckoning. The final message landed. Merle was escorted out by security. I watched his figure disappear down the hall. Family members looked at me, some with relief, some with fear. I walked out under the Minnesota night sky, the stars cold above, the air crisp. The watch ticked in my pocket. I felt free, not because the fight was over, but because I chose to stand. I thought of what I gained, recognition, control, yes, but also the sting of betrayal, and the cost of memory. Grandpa's legacy was preserved, but the Ashcroft family would never look the same. Tomorrow begins healing. I breathed in the chill. I already saw the tasks ahead, rebuilding trust with Zadie, supporting Orpha, defining myself beyond the name. I closed my eyes briefly. Victory isn't the absence of wounds, it's making them worth telling, I told myself. Then I heard the knock on the car window. I opened the door. A hand slid a business card across the seat. DRX Corp., board audit. Tomorrow morning. Something that felt like a beginning shifted again. The game had just changed. I woke up and there was nothing but quiet. No phone lighting up. No knocks at the door. Just stillness. I sat up slowly, listening to the creak of the house, the sound of wind against the siding. And for once, I didn't reach for my phone. I let the silence stretch. I walked barefoot into the kitchen, made coffee the way Grandpa taught me, boil first, ground second, never the other way around. I sat in his old recliner, worn leather still shaped like him. The only thing I took when we cleaned out the house. Not the painting, not the china. Just that chair. Because sometimes, what holds you matters more than what you display. I thought about last night. About Merle's face when the truth hit. Orpha gripping her glass like it was the last thing keeping her upright. Zadie, stone-faced, but blinking too much. The family didn't shatter. It cracked in the right places. Sometimes that's the best you can ask for. There was no triumph in it. No satisfaction. Just a slow breath I hadn't been able to take in years. The pocket watch sat on the table. Still ticking. Still moving. Just like time. Just like me. I looked out the window and said, not to anyone in particular, we made it, Grandpa. Somehow, we made it. Later that morning, I drove out to the old house, not the main estate, but the little side structure where Grandpa kept his tools. The garage still smelled of dust, oil, and his cologne. I stepped inside and stood still. It felt like walking into a held breath. This was the place he taught me how to change a tire, hammer a bent nail straight, and how to wait, really wait, for things to settle before acting. Rush breaks more than it fixes, he'd say, handing me a wrench that was always too big for my hands. I drifted through the space like memory pulled me. I could see him, clear as day, labeling jars with that perfect handwriting, saying, Ben Franklin was right. Investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. Then something caught my eye. A strip of insulation bulged just slightly above the workbench. I peeled it back. Behind it, tucked in like a secret he wanted found, but only by the right hands, was a rusted metal box. My hands didn't shake, not yet. I opened it. Inside, a letter, folded with care. His handwriting still sharp, still bold. You already found the truth. This is just my pride saying thank you for getting there on your own. My throat tightened. Beneath it, a postscript. Forgiveness is your decision now, not their reward. I sat there on the floor. The concrete cold against me. The silence a little heavier than before. And something in me, some knot I hadn't noticed, loosened. Grandpa didn't give me answers. He gave me tools, and he trusted I'd use them. That same afternoon, I visited Clyde. He was sharper than I'd seen him in months. His eyes tracked me as I came in, and he gave a half smile that felt like a full sentence. You didn't bury a secret, he said, voice clear. You unearthed a legacy. I laughed once, tired but grateful. What now? I asked. He shrugged. You write what's next. On the way out, my phone buzzed. DRX Corp. I almost ignored it, but I didn't. They wanted me on a legacy accountability panel, some new effort after the scandal. They said my name had come up, repeatedly, and with weight. I hung up without answering, stood in the parking lot staring at my reflection in the car window. I didn't see an Ashcroft. I didn't see a whistleblower. I saw someone still here. Still trying. That was enough. At home, I stood in front of the mirror for a while. My eyes had more edge than I remembered. Less softness, but more steadiness. I didn't need to erase the past to walk forward. I just had to stop dragging it behind me. I dialed Orpha first. She picked up. Didn't say anything for a moment. Then, Venora. That's still my name, I replied. I know, she said. I just didn't know how to say it anymore. We should talk, I told her. She paused. Then, Zadie's here. I'll put you on speaker. The conversation wasn't warm, but it was real. We didn't apologize. We didn't cry, but we listened. That was enough, for now. The next morning, the sky was washed in soft gray. I drove to the cemetery with the pocket watch in my coat pocket. The grass was damp. The air smelled like October. His gravestone was just as I remembered, plain, no flourish. But now, etched beneath his name, were 3 words, seen in full. I knelt, placed the ticking watch at the base of the stone, and let the sound of it settle into the moment. You're free now, I said. And so am I. I stood there a long time, letting the wind speak, letting the weight lift. When I got home, there was a plain envelope on the doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside was a photograph. Grandpa, standing with a woman I didn't know. They were smiling, alive. The photo was dated 2 years after his supposed death. I stared at it for a long time. Not in shock, not even in anger. Just wondering. If he lived longer than they told us, I whispered to myself, what else did he hide?